Looking at the two MOUs, I think somehow different. One of them is between Iran and the United States. They don't need to ratify that by the parliament in Iran or the Congress in the United States, because these are somehow some sort of steps toward achieving or toward the next step, the next phase of talks. Let's assume that, be positive about that. But with the case of Lebanon, is somehow different. You're basically legitimizing the Israeli occupation in southern part of Lebanon by saying that they can stay there as long as Hezbollah is not disarmed. This is not something coming from the government in Lebanon. It has to be ratified in the parliament.
Mm.
And without that, I don't see anything happening practically. It's not pragmatic somehow looking at the not only the occupation, it's about the aid, military aid to Hazel to Lebanon. Basically, what type of military aid do they need? And they need air defense system, fighter jets. Are they
No,
going to get it? Nothing
no.
of that sort. So when it comes to, it says that the government in Lebanon would cooperate with the United States to put pressure on the acts of resistance financially, to
Mm.
go after them, how they receive money, what are the sources, and how to cut the links. And this is all about that. And putting pressure on the acts of resistance, basically, it means Lebanon and Palestinians. Who's
Wh-
there?
which which is already the policy, and this is
Yeah.
an ongoing process that's been going already. So, as you rightly point out, I mean, Hezbollah, the party, the political wing, has a working majority, you could say, over parliament, and the Nabil Berri and other statements. There's no way. There's no way. It's not going to. It's not legal. The president has no legal authority, and certainly any of these ambassadors that signed it have no legal authority for that. And not to mention, it would require a rewrite of the Lebanese constitution, just to enter into an agreement like that. It's what it is symbolic and a huge betrayal and a really high act of treason by the president and the prime minister. It is one of the most treasonous acts in the history of Lebanon, I would think. And that's not an exaggeration. And that's what a lot of Lebanese feel. And I know many Lebanese, including, Sunni and Christian, who are not happy with this agreement and feel that it was imposed by the United States and Israel on Lebanon through bureaucratic and political means. And it wasn't done democratically at all. Lebanon doesn't have any sovereignty. They don't have any authority over their own military. That's why the policy of the Lebanese armed forces is not to engage Israel. That's their policy. Imagine. So Israel, according to the Lebanese armed forces, has a free hand to kill, to bomb, to blow up entire villages, to 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 destroy 50,000 plus homes, infrastructure, and Israel can seize what it feels it has to seize, even in terms of land, resources, perhaps. There's nothing the Lebanese armed forces will do to restrain or stand in their way. That's their policy. So if that's their policy, where does that leave the people in the South? And the way the U.S. just wants to frame this to the world, to the West, is Israel's just defending itself against a terrorist organization. They've listed Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. We've talked about this before. That's the framing of it. And then the people there are Hezbollah sympathizers or Shiites. They need to basically leave. And when they depopulate, Israel will feel safer. Okay. So they're using sectarianism as the basis for ethnic cleansing under threat of death. That's the Israeli position. That's what they've been doing. They've been threatening whole villages, parts of major cities like Tyre, that Shiite Muslims cannot be allowed or be sheltered even by other Lebanese. If they will, then whoever's sheltering those refugees will become targets. This is a war crime. It's against every single shred of international humanitarian law. It's in violation of dozens and dozens and dozens of UN resolutions and Security Council resolutions. How is this even acceptable on any level? And so that's so the Lebanese armed forces can't do anything about any of this, but Hezbollah can, and they are resisting that, and they are inflicting damage on the IDF. They are inflicting casualties on the Israeli forces. This is why Israel is desperate to have the United States intervene to create this stalemate, this impasse, so that it can reinforce and reconsolidate its positions. That's it. That's it. This was a major crisis for the IDF for the last 2 months. You know, that's the only reason this is happening. And then they were even doubly worried that Iran imposing non-hostilities and no military aggression in Lebanon on Israel will further make this a problem for the Israelis. And so they need to get rid of this MOU. They need to get the government in Beirut somehow compliant. They need to create the conditions for a violent civil war in Lebanon. This is the only out for Israel, is a violent civil war in Lebanon. That's their out. If they can achieve this, and the United States is working with 100%. Nima, don't even think this isn't happening. The U.S. intelligence are working with the Al Qaeda regime in Damascus, as are Israeli intelligence, and they are absolutely preparing as a contingency an incursion by terrorist Al Qaeda forces led by Al Sharar, the self-proclaimed head-chopping president, in order to antagonize and to somehow distract, damage, and inflict casualties on Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And Israel will use that as a green light to reconsolidate its positions and increase buffer zones. And beyond all this, we have the offshore maritime border dispute between Lebanon and Israel. And guess what? That problem goes away for Israel. That problem goes away, and they will extend their security line into the sea. And by doing that, they then retain control over two very lucrative gas fields, offshore gas fields, that do belong to Lebanon. And that Israel's always been trying to create a legal controversy that has kept that mired in legal controversy and in international courts and arbitration for the longest time. It's also created problems within Lebanon as to who decides who's going to control which company is going to get the contract, which sectarian family in Lebanon is going to reap the benefits of this offshore gas field. And meanwhile, Israel is now changing facts on the ground as well as facts off the coast, you see. And that's looking ahead. They're looking way ahead. They're 20 years ahead. And so the fresh water, offshore, agricultural land, security buffer zones, marrying up their positions in the Golan Heights and Mount Hermon with South Lebanon, full operational control from Sweda all the way to the Mediterranean. And it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. The bad news for Lebanon does not end there. Then we're going to talk about Tripoli and the destabilization of North Lebanon with Syria intervening. And the Gulf states are very keen, in my opinion, to finance a lot of this because they favor the Takfiri, Salafist brand of Islam and the militant brand of Islam. And that gives them more influence and control over large parts of Lebanon. This is the game that's being played right now. Lebanon, once again, is a football pitch for other great powers to fight their battles and to play games at the expense of the native Arab Levantine population, as is in Palestine, is also so with Lebanon.
Yeah. Even under this so-called MOU between Israel and Lebanon, we know something like 200,000 people were displaced during the war, and Israel is destroying and just leveling many villages and cities, ancient villages in the southern part of Lebanon. This is a huge loss for the history of Lebanon, in my opinion. And the government doesn't seem to care about that. But when it comes to the reconstruction, which was mentioned in the MOU, it says reconstruction fund comes from the United States if, again, disarmament happens, disarmament of Hezbollah. This is a recipe for disaster, I think, for Lebanon as a
Yeah,
whole. The government is just, there are governments, there are countries in the region who want to help Lebanon to reconstruct basically the southern part of Lebanon. For those people, many people were displaced, many Shia Christians, and they were displaced, and they want to get back home. They wanna they
yeah.
cannot stay forever out, going to to Beirut or some areas in Beirut in the central part of Lebanon. They want to get back home in the southern part of Lebanon. This is the
Well, they're
problem, but the
and they're not
government is
safe.
not.
They're
Yeah.
not safe in Beirut. They're not safe in Beirut. Their refugee tents are being bombed by the IDF. The other thing, Nima, people don't realize that because of the sectarian division in Lebanon, the authorities represented by Joseph Ayoun and Nawaf Salam are making it very difficult for internally displaced Shiites to move around the country. They don't have access and cannot stay where they want. They're harassing them. They're cutting off access and freedom of movement for these people, making life very difficult for them because this is what the United States wants. That's what Israel wants. And as you just mentioned, Nima, there we go again, dangling the money, the reconstruction. That this is the game they play with the Lebanese forever. And the West know how to play this game with the Lebanese, and they use this to divide them. They use this. They use the money, the promises of money, the promises of resolving this, funding that, bailout fund, whatever. There's always a crisis in Lebanon that needs bailing out, whether it's the rubbish, uh, whether it's a water crisis, whether it's an electricity crisis, it's power, constantly in need of a bailout. It never ends. The port disaster a couple of years ago, so what was that about? And we could get into that another time, what actually happened there. But we've seen it too often, and again, and this is the same game that's being played now. But the results are devastating, and so much more is at stake now. The stability of the entire region is at stake, and Iran has decided to create this hinge regarding South Lebanon for the region, and it's the leverage has been working. It's created a global conversation, and it's put a lot of pressure on Israel and pressure on the Trump administration. And everything they're doing right now is to try to wiggle out of that corner. That's all of this theater in Beirut. This is what this is all about. And to do that, Trump needs to undermine and sabotage his own MOU, and he'll get support for that because the GOP and the warmongering crowd in Washington are saying this is a bad deal already, and so is the Israeli lobby, and they've publicly stated they're going to dismantle the MOU in this process because it's bad for Israel. And they're already saying, "Oh, it's a bad deal," just like the JCPOA. Oh, it's a bad deal. So it's just, and I don't think Trump is. I'm not going to give him the credit that some of the other pundits do on some of these podcasts. People are saying, "Oh, Donald Trump really doesn't want this war. He never wanted this war." I don't believe that for a second. He did the war, so it's.
I think he's the only one, maybe in the administration, who really wanted this war. He thought that he's gonna get something big out of this war.
It's irrelevant what he may have said on the campaign trail, or what a sideways comment that he might have made about, going to war with Iran, how that would be a disaster, whatever. It doesn't matter, because he did it. He did it
Yeah,
twice. He engaged in an undeclared war of aggression twice against Iran in the
yeah,
last year, so it doesn't really matter. So I don't think he's serious. I don't think he understands what he's into. I don't think he has any idea how to get out of it, and personally, I don't think he has the courage politically to stand up to the Israel lobby,
mm,
or to stand up to the hawks in his own party, quite frankly, and certainly not the media. He'll just be manipulated. If the American establishment, the media, the political establishment, the consensus in Washington, if they want more war, they're going to get more war. And Donald Trump's not going to have any say in that at all. He will just go along with it. He's not a very strong political leader. He's very weak. He is one of the weakest US presidents in history. And you can tell he's weak because he constantly has to have an entourage around him, because he's so insecure. He's always flanked by his lieutenants. He can't do anything. He needs to always have a show of force. He's constantly deferring to Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio whenever there's a difficult question or an issue comes up. He has no resolute beliefs or principles at all. He's completely flapping in the wind all the time. And I think it's because of Trump's weakness that this disaster it continues to unfold. It's because of Trump's weakness that the Ukraine situation is way worse than it was when he took office a year and a half ago. And it's because of Trump's weakness that the Gaza situation is an abject failure by the United States, that it's 10 times worse than when he took office. It's because of his weakness. Donald Trump is right now making Joe Biden look strong and stable in comparison. I'm not saying Biden was,
yeah.
but relatively speaking, at least Biden
No,
had a couple of.
actually, Biden wasn't there. It was a
It was exactly. He at least has the excuse of having dementia and early onset Parkinson's syndrome. What's Donald Trump's excuse? I mean, I don't think he has dementia. He seems fairly canny, especially when it comes to his stock market picks. He's not absent-minded, but he's weak. He's a weak politician, and he's in Donald Trump is in way over his head. He's in the only thing that a leader like in that position as a chief executive in America, to get through a crisis like this, you need to have strong principles that provide you with your backbone. Trump has the backbone of a jellyfish. He has no beliefs or principles in pretty much anything. The only thing he really deeply believes in is that he must always be pumping up his personal brand and taking credit for things that he did or didn't do. That's the only real solid belief system that this president has, Nima. We've been watching him extremely closely the last year and a half, and it's just one failure after another. He keeps racking them up and then trying to sell his failures as great victories and successes. And at this point, it's just become a running joke. And this has come at such an extreme cost to the region, to the global economy, to the United States politically, the American reputation on the world stage. Donald Trump and his administration have done so much damage to all of this that I I I don't want to bet against them, all the time, but I think you'd be a fool to bet that they're going to be successful at this point, unless there's a massive change in personnel and policy. Is that I don't think that's going. I don't think they're capable of that. I really don't, and so that's why I'm really cynical about these negotiations. And that's why the only hope is that Iran and its allies and maybe the Gulf states can see through this deception and somehow chart a more responsible and sane path through this, and for the Gulf states not to use Lebanon as their personal project. that they can throw money at and manipulate. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about the UAE and others. And that's what they've traditionally done to Lebanon and Syria. And this is also part of the, I think, real damage that's being done to the region and the world is because of that. You can blame Israel for a lot, but we can also blame the Gulf for their constant meddling and trying to pick winners and losers and their sectarian proclivities. It's been devastating for Lebanon, and it's a real attack on their sovereignty. So the Lebanese sovereignty is getting hit by the Americans. Not allowing their armed forces to have any real defense. They're getting hit by the Gulf states, by all the cash that is awash in their system, picking sides, setting people against each other, and their sovereignty has taken a massive hit by the Israelis. It's a tiny country, Lebanon. It's the size of Wales. And you have three, powerful countries undermining and gnawing away at their sovereignty constantly, and they really can't defend themselves. Lebanon's so weak as politically, and their government is really based on a sham. It's the confessionalist system is based on a census from 1960, and the numbers don't reflect what the actual demographics are today, which there would be, the president should be Shiite if you're going by proportional sectarian representation. And you wouldn't have, this deal would not have been signed. They wouldn't have entered into any negotiations with Israel. It would be a united front, and that would be that. But in the colonial tradition, the West liked to have a minority in charge of a bigger majority. And that's the way they want it. So that's how they manage Lebanon.
Yeah, which is the case for Bahrain.
Yes, yes, Bahrain, or Saddam Hussein in Iraq, or the list goes on and on.